Hello, my friends and fellow VEDSies. It is day 7, which means that it is response day for me. Now, here is the thing. I popped a blood vessel in my eye yesterday, and it's fine, but it looks gross, and I don't want to look at it, and I don't want to make you guys look at it, and the response videos I had lined up were kind of more on the serious side, so I don't want to do a really serious video as a voiceover. So instead, I'm going to focus on what you guys commented on my day 1 video, which was a lot of stuff about feeling like we were an adventuring party and feeling like we were a D&D party, which was intentional. But of course, that got me thinking, what would we be like as a D&D party? And so I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I made miniature designs in Hero Forge, and today I am going to share with you guys the VEDSies as a Dungeons and Dragons party. Now, starting with the most obvious, I cast Graham as a human College of Lore bard. I know, I made the traveling musician a bard. How groundbreaking. Okay, but aside from the fact that no shit, of course Graham was the bard, I really liked the idea of College of Lore because it's all about history and collecting stories, and so it has Graham as a story collecting traveling musician, which just felt right. It just felt correct. And then for the miniature, I figured that Graham would have multiple different outfits, including performance outfits, and so I took a sort of Kiss inspiration with this outfit. And for the next most obvious, at least to me, is Caleb as a dwarf knowledge domain cleric. I don't know if y'all know this, I don't know if it's come up in VEDS, but Kleb loves dwarves. Fantasy dwarves are a thing for him. And it made sense, and it fit the vibe, so I was happy to oblige. And, well, we all know that Caleb is the mythology guy, the lover of gods and pantheons, and so it made sense to have him as one of the religious classes. And I figured specifically knowledge domain because, I mean, Caleb, you are a smart person. It was the only thing that made sense. And for the design, I know that knowledge domain isn't like war domain where it's like you're definitely gonna be fighting, but I thought that a dwarven cleric would still lean into the aesthetics of all of that, even if that wasn't your deal. It might just be like a ceremonial thing, but it felt cool and fitting. Now for James, I went with a Furbolg Battlesmith Artificer. Artificers are the techies of D&D, so that made sense for you, James. They are the supportive jack of all trades with their inventions, and so then it was just a matter of deciding which subclass. Were you a potions guy? I didn't think so. Iron Man type guy? Maybe. Gun? But a robot, that felt promising. And so I went with the Battlesmith Artificer. Now, Furbolg admittedly was just 100% a vibes pull, and I don't really know how to justify it, but it makes sense in my head. And so for the design of this mini, I went with a bit of a steampunk fantasy look, because if you're already going to have a robot, you might as well look as cool and flashy as possible. And then I made myself into a halfling wild magic sorcerer. I'm halfling. I feel like everyone knows this. I feel like I don't need to explain this one. Sorcerer, I feel like I do, though, because charisma is not what I would typically consider to be my main stat. However, sorcerer is the ultimate disability allegory in Dungeons and Dragons. That class is literally about something happening to you either because of someone in your family's past or some sort of weird, crazy accident or something done to you without your consent that then fundamentally changes you, and you have to learn how to function with it. And the sorcerer subclass that is the most disability-y of all of them is the wild magic sorcerer, because for everything you do right, there is a chance that something will go horribly, horribly wrong. And that felt very fitting for me. And then I thought that maybe as a part of my arc, there would be multi-classing involved where I can sort of attempt to have the powers under control and try to learn about some other sort of ability, and there's that balance that needs to be struck, and I thought it would be fun. And then for the design, I was trying to come up with something stylish and practical and just kinda cute. Now, I made Abbey a changeling cobalt soul monk, because there are a few things that I associate solely with Abbey, and one of them is movement, kinesthetic energy. And so I figured if anybody was going to be the melee fighter of the group, it made sense for it to be them. And I thought that monk felt the most correct of the melee fighter classes. And now a lot of the monk subclasses are about flashy magic powers or how or whether you want to kill people, but that didn't seem like the vibe. But truth, knowledge, that's my brain twin. And as for changeling, historically that is an autism thing, but in D&D, changelings are often genderless or gender fluid, so it's also a non-binary thing, which felt very fitting and like a cool choice. And so I wanted to give this changeling monk Abbey as much badass NB energy as I could. For Alicia, I went with a half-elven Circle of Dreams druid. One of the constant things in VEDS at this point is the Alicia reflection on life while observing nature, which, combining wisdom and nature, that's a druid. And the Circle of Dreams is the Fae druid circle, but they're specifically like the magic, hope, and healing druids, not the more aggressive subclasses. And so that felt very fitting. Now, as for half-elf, I knew I wanted you to be at least somewhat elvish, Alicia, but I wasn't sure how much, and then I did the math and realized that if you were a full elf, you would outlive everyone by a couple centuries, and that felt like a bummer, and so I thought half-elf. And then designing this, I had recently watched a costume analysis that pointed out how in Lord of the Rings, the elves don't really wear practical clothing because they don't need to, and that adds to their ethereal nature. And so I wanted to capture a similar energy in this design with an outfit that would probably suck to wear on a hike unless you were a magical forest lady. And last but not least, Jeffrey is a gnomish arcane trickster rogue. Jeffrey, I have no idea how tall you are, but you have lil guy energy, and of all the small races, gnomes are the ones that have the most lil guy energy, and so That felt fun and fitting. The class took a bit longer for me to figure out, but I realized that you're the quiet one who sort of stands back and drops something in our laps super precisely and then retreats back into the shadows, which means you're the rogue. But I didn't think you'd be like an assassin or anything that was super diabolical because you're too nice for that. So I thought that you could be the arcane trickster using illusions and charms to make life more difficult for the opponents and then attacking out of nowhere at a distance. And this would work really well if we went with the idea that you and Abbey had traveled on your own for a while before the party formed, because it would be a really good way for you to provide them with backup. Now, as for design, rogues are hard because they like to blend in, and so I tried to be true to that and true to your more casual style. And so here you have the VEDSie D&D party. It's not min-maxed, but it's totally functional, and I think it works really well in a story sense. There are 3 characters who their whole deal is collecting and protecting knowledge, and there are 2 characters who are companions from having known those people already, and a inventor and a person trying to find a quote-unquote cure for themselves also feel like people who would stick around these knowledge characters. And so I think that that works out really well. But I'm excited to hear what y'all think, and if you would have done anything differently, and if you have any headcanons for what the VEDSies adventuring party would be like. And with that, my friends and fellow VEDSies, I will see you tomorrow.